So this week on Develop and Grow, I am bringing a book that I recently finished. So I'm going to show it to our YouTube viewers. So if you're watching the video, hopefully that's in focus. It's a book called Tiny Habits by a PhD by the name of BJ Fogg. And BJ Fogg works at Stanford University in the States, and he is a behavioral science researcher. So his whole job is looking at why humans do what we do and how do we change our habits or change our behaviors. And so we've spoken a lot about habit change on this podcast, Chad, about how do we improve good habits, how do we cut out bad habits, and how do we try and improve our lives on a day-to-day basis. And BJ Fogg is one of the leaders in that space. I've been reading his research for a while, and so I'm really excited that he finally wrote a book with all of his research in one place. So I can finally recommend it for anyone who's looking to improve their habits or improve some things about their life. The science in here and kind of the philosophy in here is amazing. So I'd highly recommend that book. What I thought I'd do is pull out one key aspect, which I think we haven't chatted about on the podcast that much, which is the idea of celebrating the small wins. I think, Chad, you're the same as me. Our kind of personalities are, we kind of forget about celebrating small wins because we're both very ambitious people. We're both very driven. And I think if you're listening to this podcast, it's quite likely you are as well. And we have these huge dreams we're trying to accomplish. And what happens is if we get too hard on ourselves in pursuit of those dreams, we can start to feel nihilistic and start to feel down and depressed about those things because we're not achieving these crazy ideas that we think should happen tomorrow, right?
Definitely.
And one of the key aspects to behavioral change that comes out of this book is the fact that momentum is the most important force in any behavior change. So momentum is immensely powerful. And the idea is that you're never going to achieve those big wins unless you build the momentum of small wins on the way to that big win, right? So we kind of see in life that winners win more and losers lose more because basically the momentum gets in their heads and there's a psychological self-fulfilling prophecy if you get into one of those spirals. And so when he says celebrate the small wins in this book, he's meaning very, very small wins. The book is called Tiny Habits. So celebrate the tiny wins. So he talks about things like if you're struggling to get out of bed in the morning and you keep snoozing that alarm and you push snooze, 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 and you're lying in bed for 45 minutes, every day that you get out of your bed at that first alarm, he tells you to punch your fist in the air and say, yes, come on, I did it. and really celebrate in that super silly way to yourself. And the reason he says that is because just that silly little celebration releases dopamine in your head that then is allocated to that behavior. So it gives you a better chance of the next morning, because your brain wants that dopamine hit again, is to repeat that behavior. So that tiny win, even though it seems super ridiculous, and if your partner's lying in bed next to you, they're going to think you're a madman, it's really important because those are the wins that kind of build the progress for the day. And if you're able to celebrate those tiny, tiny, tiny wins, those tiny moments where you can stave off your addiction or stave off your temptation, or you're able to eat that apple instead of that chocolate bar, or you're able to go to the gym instead of sitting at home watching Netflix. Every one of those small wins is an opportunity to congratulate yourself and to celebrate that win so that you build that momentum going forward. And so I think it's a really important point, both for mental health, to try and keep us on the right track and keep us positive about our lives. And also, it's actually scientifically valuable because that dopamine hit from that celebration, once it's linked to that behavior, it makes it much easier to repeat that going forward. What do you think, Chad?
I love this. I love the idea of pulling out the seemingly insignificant bits and actually celebrating them. Although I am wondering what my partner would do if I leaped out of bed with my fist in the air, celebrating getting out of bed. But I can completely see the benefit to it. I mean, it's just one of those where I think even in our sort of bigger pieces, our bigger goals and the bigger projects that we take on, I think splitting it out and forcing ourselves to split it out into multiple pillars, into multiple stages, is a way to get that continual, you're continually ticking things off, continually getting progress. Because I think a lot of the time we like to see something as either complete or not, and it could be this massive mountain that stands in front of you, all these little piles, along the way, and if you force yourself to split them out into small things, you can kind of then, coupled with a bit of celebration and achievement for every single one of those things, at least, as you say, get that momentum, which I think is important, and I think it's a great little idea. So yeah, thanks for bringing that one about, and hopefully our listeners can take it on.
Definitely. And I want to kind of allay some of the concerns. I know that some of you listening right now are like, I'm never going to fist bump in public. That's never going to happen. So I just want to let you know that it doesn't have to be a fist bump. So he makes it very clear that your tiny celebration could be anything, right? So it could be imagining the sound of a crowd roaring for you, or imagining a high five from someone you care about, or just a smile on your face in the mirror, or whatever it is, right? So find the tiny celebration that works for you. I'm not saying that all of you have to jump in the air and fist bump with your heart's delight, even though I recommend that. But there are lots of ways to celebrate. So find the tiny celebration that works for you, and then apply that to all the various small wins in your life. What that does is it focuses your attention on the good. It focuses your attention on things where you get it right. We are so good at spotting the one thing we did wrong in the space of like a whole day, right? So we don't celebrate the 30 things we did right. We focus on the one thing we did wrong. We feel horrible about it, and we tell ourselves story that we aren't worthy, and we are failures and losers and all that kind of stuff. And so the more we can focus on those small things we do right, and those mini celebrations, those tiny celebrations, it makes for a better life.
You're completely right. I mean, right at the beginning of this episode, Barry and I had a little quick catch up with each other offline. And I mean, the first thing that I mentioned was how I messed up one song that I did at open mic night last night. Now, I did 4, and the 3 others were pretty good. But, you know, like you said, I kind of just focused on the one that was, a little bit, not perfect. And, if instead I walked away from that evening saying, wow, I actually smashed that. Didn't think I would be able to do that one so well. Crowd really enjoyed that one. People were singing along to that track. That is this kind of change, and I think the change that we need to start doing. So I certainly know at the end of this episode, Barry's going to leap out of his chair and hopefully not punch the camera out into the street. But certainly little wins along the way. Let's move on to our next segment.